Okay, here we are on part 2. Remember, he's going to teach him how to carve a bird. And he said he likes robins. Can you see the angel that Mr. Toomey's working on there? That's really pretty, isn't it? With a piece of charcoal, the woodcarver sketched a robin on a piece of brown paper. He handed Thomas a small block of pine and a knife. He showed him how to lop the corners from the block and slowly smooth the edges of the wood into curves. Thomas copied the woodcarver's strokes, head bent, tongue working from side to side on his lower lip as he concentrated. And when the church bells chimed 6 o'clock, Jonathan Toomey was holding Thomas's hand in his, guiding the knife along the edge of a wing. He didn't hear them ringing. The widow McDowell said it was time to leave. Thomas brushed wood shavings from his shirt. Then he reached out and brushed 2 especially large pieces of wood shaving from Jonathan Toomey's beard. He thanked the woodcarver for teaching him how to carve, and later, after a dinner of boiled potatoes and molasses cookies, Jonathan Toomey went to his workbench. He thought for a really long time. He sketched drawing after drawing, and finally he picked up his carving knife, and he picked up the angel, and he carved until his eyelids drooped. So there he is. He's teaching him how to carve a bird. And then look over here at this angel that he's carved. Wow, isn't she pretty? Or he pretty? It pretty? I think Mr. Toomey might be getting it. You get it yet? A few days later, there was a knock on the door, the woodcarver's door, and Mr. Toomey jumped up to answer it. There stood the widow McDowell with a bouquet of pine boughs and holly sprigs dotted with berries. And there stood Thomas clutching his partly carved robin. While Thomas and Mr. Toomey carved, Mrs. McDowell put the bouquet in a jar of water. She scrubbed Mr. Toomey's kitchen table and set the jar in the center on a pretty cloth embroidered with lilies of the valley and daisies, which she found in a drawer below the cupboard. Next, I will carve the wise men and Joseph, the woodcarver said to Thomas. Perhaps before I begin, you can tell me what I'm doing wrong. Well, said Thomas, my wise men were wearing their most wonderful robes because they were going to visit Jesus, and my Joseph was leaning over the baby Jesus like he was protecting him, and he looked very serious. It wasn't until the church bells had chimed and the widow and her son were preparing to go that Mr. Toomey saw the jar of pine boughs and the scrubbed table and the cloth embroidered with lilies of the valley and daisies. I found the cloth in a drawer. I thought it would look pretty on the table, said Mrs. McDowell, smiling. Never open that drawer, said Mr. Toomey harshly. And when the two had left, Jonathan put the cloth away. That evening, after a supper of boiled potatoes, the woodcarver worked on Joseph and the wise men until his eyes drooped closed. He sure doesn't look like a very happy guy, does he? Can you see them? Pretty cool, I think. He's really talented, isn't he? A few days later, there was a knock on the woodcarver's door. He dusted the crumbs from his beard and brushed the sawdust from his shirt. At the door were the widow McDowell and Thomas. All afternoon, Thomas watched the woodcarver work, and when it was time to leave, Jonathan said to Thomas, I'm about to begin the last 2 figures, Mary and the baby. Can you tell me how your figures looked? They were the most special of all, said Thomas. Jesus was smiling and reaching up to his mother, and Mary looked like she loved him very much. Thank you, Thomas, said the woodcarver. Tomorrow is Christmas. Is there any chance the figures will be ready? The widow McDowell asked. They will be ready when they are ready. I understand, said the widow, and she handed Jonathan 2 packages. Merry Christmas, she said. Jonathan folded his arms across his chest. I want no presents. That is exactly why we are giving them, answered the widow, and she put them on the table and they left. Jonathan sat down at the table. Slowly he opened the first package. Inside was a red scarf, hand-knit, warmed and bright. He tied the scarf around his neck. The other package held a robin, crudely carved of pine. A smile twitched at the corner of Jonathan's mouth as he ran his finger over the lopsided wings. He dusted the fireplace mantel with his sleeve and placed the robin exactly in the center so he could look at it from his chair. What happened? Thomas gave Mr. Toomey the robin that he carved, his very first carving. That was really special, wasn't it? Yeah. Oh, and over here, you can see the fireplace mantle, and there's the robin on the fireplace. The woodcarver did not eat supper that day. Instead, he began to sketch the final figures, Mary and Jesus. He drew Mary, and then he wadded the sketch into a ball and tossed it on the floor. He drew the baby, wadded up that piece of paper, and threw it on the floor with the first. He sketched again and again. He crumbled the paper, and soon there was a mountain of crumbled paper at his feet. He picked up a block of wood and tried to carve, but his knife would not do what he wanted it to do. He hurled the chunks of wood into the fireplace and sat staring into the flames. He's frustrated, isn't he? It's almost like he can't figure out how to carve those two figures. Then he heard the church bells announcing the midnight Christmas service. He got up. Slowly he opened the drawer beneath the cupboard, the drawer he had told the widow never to open, and from it he took the cloth embroidered with lilies of the valley and daisies. He took out a rough woolen shawl and a lace handkerchief. He took out a tiny white baby blanket and a little pair of blue socks. He placed each gently on the floor. From the bottom of the drawer, he lifted out a picture frame, beautifully carved of deep brown chestnut. In the frame was a charcoal sketch of a woman sitting in a rocking chair holding a baby. The baby's arms were reaching up, touching the woman's face. The woman was looking down at the baby, smiling. Jonathan sat down in his rocking chair and held the picture against his chest. He rocked slowly, and his eyes closed, and 2 tears trailed down his beard. That was his wife and baby in those pictures, and I'll show you in a second. When he finally took the picture to his workbench and began to carve, his fingers worked quickly and surely. He carved all through the night. You see the picture over there with the woman and the baby? Yeah, that's how he figured out how he was going to carve. Do you see the other? He's already got the other ones carved, doesn't he? And he's working like crazy because it's Christmas Eve. The next day, there was a knock on the widow McDowell's door, and when she opened it, there stood the woodcarver, his neck wrapped in a red scarf, holding a wooden box stuffed with hay. "Mr. Toomy," said the widow, "what a surprise! Merry Christmas!" "The figures are ready," he said, and stepped inside, and from the box, Jonathan unpacked 2 curly sheep, happy sheep, because they were with Jesus. He unpacked a proud cow and an angel, a very important angel, with mighty wings stretching from its shoulders right down to the hem of its gown. He unpacked 3 wise men, wearing their most wonderful robes, edged with fur and falling in rich folds. He unpacked a serious and caring Joseph. He unpacked Mary, wearing a rough woolen shawl, looking down, loving her precious baby son. Jesus was smiling and reaching up to touch his mother's face. That is really cool, isn't it? Yep. That day, Jonathan went to the Christmas service with the widow McDowell and Thomas. And that day in the churchyard, the village children saw Jonathan throw back his head, showing his eyes as clear blue as an August sky, and laughing. No one would ever call him Mr. Gloomy again. He found Jesus, didn't he? And Jesus made his heart happy. Yes, sir. He had a Merry Christmas, didn't he? And that's the end. Love you guys. Hope you're having a good day. Give your mamas hugs for me, okay? I'll read you another one soon. Bye-bye.